All right, let's get right into it. Psychopath, sociopath. We hear these words all the time, right? Especially when we're talking about our favorite movie villains. But what's the actual difference? Is there one? Well, in this explainer, we're going to break it all down, get to the bottom of it, and clear up the confusion for good. I mean, you know exactly who I'm talking about. You've got that impossibly charming, cold-blooded killer who's always like 10 steps ahead of everyone else. And then you've got the impulsive, messy, totally volatile con artist who just leaves a trail of chaos wherever they go. They both feel incredibly dangerous, but in really different ways. And it turns out there's a very good reason for that. So, before we start pulling them apart, we first have to talk about the one thing that actually brings them together in the eyes of psychology. Okay, so here's probably the biggest surprise right off the bat. You're not actually going to find psychopath or sociopath as official diagnoses in the big clinical handbook, the DSM-5. Nope. Instead, they both fall under this one big umbrella term, Antisocial Personality Disorder, or ASPD. And at its heart, ASPD is all about a deep, ongoing disregard for other people's rights and feelings. This is the common ground they're both standing on. Okay, so if they share a diagnosis, where does the real difference come in? Well, the first major split isn't about what they do, it's about what they feel, or maybe more accurately, what they can't feel. And this is where thinking of it as cold versus hot really, really helps. The psychopath is cold. The internal wiring for things like empathy or remorse, it just isn't there, it's absent. To them, other people are just pawns on a chessboard, things to be used and then discarded. But the sociopath, they're hot. Their inner world is way more chaotic. They might have a flicker of a conscience, a really weak signal, but it's one they can easily ignore. They might even be able to form a real bond with a specific person or a small group, but that little circle of empathy is like a fortress, and nobody else is getting inside. I love this quote because it just illustrates that difference so perfectly. The psychopath, the wolf in sheep's clothing, is an expert at blending in. You'd never know. The sociopath, on the other hand, is a wolf in wolf's clothing. What you see is pretty much what you get. Their true nature is right there at the surface, and it's much harder for them to hide. So, let's take that idea and look at how it plays out on the outside. Their internal worlds directly shape their actions, especially when it comes to their behavior and how good they are at fooling people. So, because a psychopath feels nothing on the inside, their actions can be incredibly calculated. These are meticulous planners. They can wear this mask of normalcy for years, charming everyone around them. They're basically master actors, mimicking the emotions they've studied and learned to perform, but have never ever actually felt. The sociopath, though, is driven by those hot, impulsive emotions. They're much more likely to have fits of rage and totally erratic behavior. Their mask is flimsy, and it can slip at any moment, showing everyone what's really going on underneath. And all of this leads us to that classic age-old question, right? Nature versus nurture. Are people like this born, or are they made? Well, for psychopathy, the evidence is pointing really strongly towards nature. We're talking about genetics, about literal, physical differences in the parts of the brain that handle emotion and impulse control. The thinking right now is that psychopaths are, for the most part, born with the wiring that makes them this way. Sociopathy, however, seems to be a product of nurture, or maybe a complete lack of it. It's usually connected to a person's environment, things like severe childhood trauma, abuse, or just growing up in a chaotic, unstable home. That experience can seriously mess with how a personality develops, and that's what creates the sociopath. So, to put it simply, psychopaths are born, but sociopaths are made. Okay, let's pull all these threads together. We've looked inside their heads, we've watched their behavior, and we've talked about where they come from. Now let's see the whole picture, side by side. So when you lay it all out like this, the pattern becomes crystal clear, doesn't it? The psychopath is defined by that cold, calculated control, something that comes from their very nature. They are master mimics. The sociopath, on the other hand, is a product of their chaotic world. Their behavior is hot, impulsive, and their mask is unstable because their inner world is just a storm. It really is the difference between a finely tuned machine and a raging forest fire. And this is why it's so important to know the difference. It's not just about getting movie trivia right, it helps us understand the very different ways that manipulation and harm can show up in the real world. One is a hidden predator, moving silently among us, maybe in a boardroom, maybe in a position of power. The other is more like a cornered animal, lashing out, completely unpredictable. Knowing the pattern is the first step to seeing the danger. So I'll leave you with this to chew on. Now that you know all this, who do you think is actually more dangerous? The cold, calculated predator who can't feel a thing and can walk among us completely undetected? Or the hot-headed, erratic person who can feel but can be set off at any moment? It's a pretty unsettling question when you really think about it.